Hi there, this is Bruno from Spainguru.es, and this is the Spanish non-lucrative visa webinar. Today is November 5th, 2025. Of course, if you're watching this in YouTube and you think that I add value by all the information that I'm sharing with you today, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Let's start with the presentation and then go to the Q&A session at the end. The way we structure this webinar is before the application, during the application, and after the approval. We're going to talk about definitions, consulates, BLS offices, immigration status, tax considerations, and visa eligibility requirements, documentations, and we're going to go through the process of applying for the NLV, timing, timeframes, different ways to see it, and once you get your visa, how you arrive to Spain, renewal process, long-term residency, going for Spanish citizenship, and transition to work permits. The content of this webinar is for information purposes only and is not legal or financial advice, and the requirements listed here are not official. Please check your specific consulate requirements or BLS offices. But before we start, a little bit about Spainguru.es. Our objective is facilitating relocation process for English-speaking foreigners to Spain since 2014. And you can find great reviews on Trustpilot, on Google, more than 250 reviews, all of them 5-star reviews, except 2 that are 4-star reviews. And you can use Spainguru for free. 100% of Spainguru is for free. You can join my weekly newsletter that I send every Monday that you can register today if you want. You can opt out anytime. And there I feature top discussions on Spainguru's community, investigation blog posts, most watched video of the week, new webinars. I'm launching 2 new webinars this week. One webinar with Ainhoa Manero on November 10th at 6 p.m. CET, where you can ask anything about moving to Spain, and a new webinar with my partners, SJB Global Financial Partners, on the 27th of November at 7 p.m. So yeah, definitely worth staying on the loop and reading about all the news. You can also watch my YouTube channel with almost 7,400 subscribers, more than 1,000 videos. 500 of them are about the non-lucrative visa. Blog with more 2,000 articles, and Facebook groups with an aggregated total of 150,000 members, from which the Spanish non-lucrative visa Facebook group is by far the biggest of this visa, dedicated group that I highly recommend you joining today. You can join right here or by scanning the QR code. More stuff about Spainguru.es. Spainguru.es is a wonderful tool to use if you're moving to Spain or considering a move to Spain. One of the sections that I have is the Move to Spain checklist. And here, if you go to Spainguru, you can just scroll down here. You can find a step-by-step Move to Spain checklist where you can find everything starting 1 year before moving to Spain, right? You can explore every single stage. You will find the different steps that generally everyone needs to do, with videos, with articles, with everything explained, right? So you don't forget anything, budget, taxes, and many, many tools. Most of them are free, but of course, if there's any relevant service for that step, it will redirect you to my vetted partners. Yes, so really, really interesting tool. The Move to Spain checklist. There's also the destinations, 13 destinations in Spain, covering 95% of places where expats used to move, and that is they're updated constantly because I link to Numbeo, to Idealista, to WeatherSpark, and that information is updated constantly. So really wonderful, because if you want to know the cost of living or other rates or other statistics, this is constantly updated. So definitely worth having a look. And if you need to use professional services, at least I highly recommend you engaging with immigration experts and tax advisors, at least consulting for 1 hour with each one of those 2, at the very least, if you're planning to move to Spain. But not only those, you can find many other services. If you go to Spainguru.es, you go to services here, and you will find immigration lawyers, sworn translators, apostille services, TIE, NIE, residency paperwork, etc. If you're moving as a Puerto Rican, health insurance for Spanish visas, medical certificates from Spanish doctor, UK doctors, travel health insurance, tax advice for Spain's filings, for US filings, financial services, financial planners, mortgages, start a business in Spain, money transfer services, investing in real estate, and more insurance, expert consultations from people, from co-founder Cristina Samson of Spainguru, from California, living in Spain for 15 years, and more resources like shipping, parcel shipping, international moving quotes, spread transport. I just released this yesterday with 2 new partners, learning Spanish for adults, online Spanish tutors, and so many services that I highly recommend you just at least checking out, because it is free to do so, and only if you engage with them. Of course, you have to pay for them because these are professional, but all personally vetted by me. Most of them I have recommended it for several years. Now let's go with the non-lucrative visa content before the application. What is the Spanish non-lucrative visa? It is a Spanish visa for non-EU citizens who can financially support themselves and who don't need to work in Spain. And I underline in Spain. This visa is defined by the main organic law for 2000 and the regulation of the law, also known as the Reglamento de Extranjería, that has recently changed, took effect on May 20th, 2025. Remember something important: the main organic law has higher hierarchy than the Reglamento de Extranjería, than the regulation, and that has deep impact into a few things that we're going to go through later on. But first, as you probably know, you can't apply for this visa from within Spain. You have to do it from a Spanish consulate abroad. Yes, this webinar, and Spainguru in general, focuses on English-speaking foreigners, mostly from the US, UK, Canada, and Australia. You can find dedicated pages for each of the consulates in those countries. Okay, you go to spainguru.es, Spain non-lucrative visa, and you will find those dedicated pages. Why is it so interesting? Why is it so important, in my opinion, that you go to those pages? Because, for example, this Los Angeles page, I list first-hand experiences of people applying for the non-lucrative visa for all the consulates in those countries. And it is very, very important that you stay updated, because each of those consulates is different. Okay, they have different interpretations of the regulation, and it is very important that you get updated, fresh information that is specific to the consulate where you're applying. Another important thing is that you need to prove that you are a legal resident within the jurisdiction that your Spanish consulate is serving. Okay, you need to prove that you're a legal resident. For example, in the US, showing your driving license. Yes, for example, if you are living in Atlanta, Georgia, your consulate is Miami. And another important fact is that many of those consulates outsource the processing of the non-lucrative visa to a company called BLS. Okay, therefore, for example, Miami, all the consulates in the UK, Houston, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., all those consulates outsource the processing of a visa to BLS International. It is an Indian company. It's a big company with presence in 66 countries, okay? And you will be dealing with them. You will have to have a personal appointment at the BLS office in the city of the consulate, okay? And what is the task of this company? To make sure that all the paperwork is handed in, everything is in order, everything is the way that the consulate wants to receive it, okay? So, of course, these are not officials who will decide on your eligibility or the granting of your visa. What they will do is to receive your filing and give it in a nice way to the consulate, right? Now, one thing you need to know: the Schengen area is a group of 29 countries, from which 25 are from the European Union and 4 are non-European Union. Doesn't matter. The group is 29 countries. What's important is that there is immigration control when you come from outside of the Schengen area into the Schengen area. But once you are inside, there is no immigration control. Okay? Usually, there could be exceptionally some immigration control. For example, during the Olympic Games. In France, there was an immigration controls for France. That can happen, but usually there is not. And also, this has some implications for many things that we're going to mention later on. Now, let's talk about the immigration status when you enter the Schengen area and when you enter Spain. Now, the citizens of USA, UK, Canada, Australia, many countries don't need a Schengen visa to enter the Schengen area. Yes? Some nationalities will need a Schengen visa. For example, Philippines. Okay? Now, you would be entering as a tourist. What time can you stay into the Schengen area as a tourist? Maximum 90 days in a 180-day rolling period. This is called the 180-day rule. Okay? After that, you need to leave the Schengen area. Now, if you want to stay in any of the member countries for more than 90 days, you will need to get a visa that will grant you a residence in that specific country. The 180-day rule, once your residency is granted, will still apply for other member countries. Okay. Now, the non-lucrative residency, yes, will let you stay in Spain for more than 90 days, and if you renew it, up to 5 years, generally. Every residency that is less than 5 years is technically considered a temporary residency in Spain. And for more than 5 years is called long-term residency, also known as permanent residency. Yes? So, what is the difference between the visa and the residency? The non-lucrative visa is the piece of paper that is attached to your passport that grants you permit to enter Spain during a certain validity period and the right to obtain a residency linked to that visa later on. And once you obtain the residency, the visa expires, no longer valid, right? So you obtain the non-lucrative visa at the consulate, you enter Spain during the visa validity period, you obtain the residency, in this case, non-lucrative residency, and then your visa expires. Now, if you're a passport holder of any of the European Union countries or associate countries, or you are a spouse or couple of someone who holds a EU passport, the non-lucrative visa or residency is not for you. There are easier pathways. First of all, if you are a EU passport holder, you have the right for residency in any of the European Union countries, okay? And if you're married to a holder of any of these passports, you can go with the EU family card, okay? That will give you residency for 5 years, will grant you work permit in Spain. If you don't plan to work, you have to show much less funding than for the non-lucrative visa, okay? You don't have to renew that permit during those 5 years, which with the non-lucrative residency you have after 1 year, for 2 more years, and for 2 more years up to 5 years. So if you have the possibility to obtain an EU passport, which many people have the possibility, maybe it's a better pathway to consider. But if you're a non-EU national, then the non-lucrative visa is for you, potentially with other visas for non-EU nationals. Now, let's talk about taxes now. A consideration that is important to have in mind. First of all, tax residency in Spain. How that works. There are 3 conditions. If any of the conditions applies, the tax authorities in Spain may deem you to be a tax resident in Spain. Yes? First of all, if you spend physically in Spain over 183 days within a calendar year that goes from January 1st to December 31st, the days don't need to be consecutive, and it doesn't matter your immigration status. For example, if you come at the beginning of the year on a scouting trip as a tourist, and then you obtain your visa later in the year, and you stay in Spain later on, you need to add all those days, including the ones you were as a tourist. Okay, so be careful when you do your calculations. This is the first condition. Second condition is if your main income source comes from Spain. And third condition is if your family lives in Spain. In case the tax authorities consider you to become a tax resident in Spain, then you would be liable for paying taxes on your worldwide income and potentially on the net value of your assets, okay, via the regional wealth tax or solidarity tax. So have that in mind when you time you're moving to Spain. Most important taxes, income tax, the annual one is deadline on June 30th with progressive tax rates from 19 to 47%. Form 720, once you become a Spanish tax resident, you need to declare the existence of assets abroad divided by category. And in case in any of the categories, for example, bank accounts or properties are over 50,000 euros, you need to declare the existence of your assets abroad, outside of Spain. There are regional wealth tax, national solidarity tax that tax the net value of your assets, okay, with allowances, with thresholds. The wealth tax is regional. Therefore, depending on where you move to Spain, you could be liable or not. Some regions like Madrid, Andalusia, Cantabria, Extremadura don't have wealth tax, for example, but other regions like Catalonia have pretty low threshold. So therefore, it's important that you understand that the decisions that you take can have a profound impact on your taxation implications. Therefore, please consult a tax advisor if you want vetted tax advisors who understand also people moving from the US, from the UK, who are used to these situations. You can also go on Spainguru.es. Also remember that Spain has double taxation agreements with USA, UK, Canada, Australia, and many other countries that will avoid you paying taxes on the same thing. Doesn't mean you will pay less taxes. Potentially, we will pay more taxes, but at least you won't pay twice on the same thing. Now, if you want to know more about taxes, please join my webinar that I hold every 15 days. It is free. I send you the recording. I have a Q&A session. So therefore, definitely worth taking your time to join. Now, let's talk about non-lucrative visa documentation. First, they will ask you where in Spain you are moving, okay? Depending on the consulate, they will be happy just for you answering, okay, I want to move into this province, okay? Valencia, Seville, Guipúzcoa, whatever. Now, some consulates go even beyond that and have a hard interpretation. And they want you to provide a rental contract in advance without you being in Spain, which is absolutely crazy, but many people comply with this in order to not have friction in their process. Consulates like Washington, D.C., like Chicago, like Boston, it's known that they ask for a rental contract, okay? Many people comply with this, even if it's pretty ludicrous interpretation of the rules, but many people rent an Airbnb for 3 months, for example, and they provide this for visa purposes. Then maybe they cancel, maybe they reduce their stay. And there's many ways people solve this. But in general, they shouldn't be asking for this, but people still comply. Address in the country of residence. As I said, you can apply from the consulate that serves the area where you're a legal resident. You will need to prove that you're a legal resident within that jurisdiction, okay? And if you're a dual passport holder, potentially you could also apply from a consulate in the country from the other passport that you're holding. For example, you hold also, you're American and you hold a Mexican passport, potentially you could apply from Ciudad de Mexico, for example, yes? Then, prove sufficient financial means to support yourself and dependents without working. We're going to talk about that. Have comprehensive private health insurance. Or if you're a UK retiree, you could potentially use the S1 form that grants you access to the public healthcare system instead of providing a private health insurance. Having a clean criminal background check, a medical certificate, which is different from the health insurance. If you're moving with your spouses and family, you will need to get a new marriage certificate, original copy, and with children, new birth certificate, original copies. All this, you will need to be apostilled and soon translated into Spanish. You will need to prove that you will not engage in any work or professional activities in Spain, depending on your situation. Potentially, you will have to also submit a letter of intent, which could be or not an official requirement to do so. Sometimes you do it to support your documentation, to explain to the officials what your situation is. If applicable, as we said, for example, some consulates like Houston, we've heard if you're moving with family, with small children, they will ask for school enrollments, sometimes rental contracts, as we said, and photographies of certain measurements, payment of the fees. Everyone applying needs to pay their fees, fill certain forms, okay, etc., etc., right? I have 2 great videos of 20 minutes each where Ainhoa Manero of Stern Abogados, expert immigration lawyer, who applies every single week for all these consulates for non-lucrative visa for her customers. She answers 43 frequently asked questions about the non-lucrative visa. There you can read the questions if you have a good eye. But definitely watching this 20 minutes video can give you a lot of great answers, especially about the, let's say, interpretation of the rules that certain consulates have. That, as you can see, if you're applying with legal help, you don't have to comply because the lawyers know how to, that you cannot basically get denied because of certain crazy interpretations that the consulate have, and having a lawyer will get you past those problems. Now, let's talk about in deeper way into each of these requirements and eligibility for this visa. First, financial requirements 2025. You need to prove that you have sufficient funds to support yourself and dependents. First, for 1 year, because the initial application is for 1 year. Okay, for renewal, potentially for 1 or 2 years, depending on the province. Now, for the initial application, how much money you need to show? For the main applicant is 400% of the IPRM index. 2025. This index may or not change every year. Each dependent needs to show 100% of the IPREM 2025. Okay, this translated into euros, main applicants need to show 28,800 euros, and each dependent 7,200 euros. Therefore, if you're applying as a couple, table on the right, second row, is 28,800 euros main applicant plus 7,200 is 36,000 euros for a couple for the initial application. How do you structure the proof of sufficient funds? It can be savings, so money in the bank, or passive income, okay, no active income, or a combination of savings and passive income, right? So it could be for passive income, pension withdrawals, potentially rental income. And I say potentially because many consulates are putting problems for this type of income because they say that it's not a secure income because the tenants can stop paying you anytime. Could be dividends, could be funds available by credit card. Some people say that this is only for renewals, but actually it also should work also for the initial application, as long as you get a certificate from the credit card company or bank that says that the credit is readily, immediately available without penalties, so it's liquid. That should also work. How do you prove all this? Via bank statements and documentation from your bank, wherever you have the money. It could be US, UK, Canada, Australia, you name it, okay? Some consulates will also ask for tax returns, yes? And depending on the consulate, they will ask you for 3 months of statements, 6 months, 12 months, whatever. Tax returns up to 3 years, okay? In the UK, for example, usually they don't ask for tax returns, but in the US, they love to ask for tax return, depending on the consulate. Now, $1 million question. After 1 year, I will have to renew. How much money or funding threshold will I have to show? Many people say you need to show double the amount, which is not entirely true. Okay, there is a nuance here. Okay, we said as a couple, initial application is 36,000 euros. Since the renewal is for 2 years, you will need to show that you have 36,000 euros times 1 year plus the second year is 72,000 euros. Now, if you, depending on the province, they ask you for 1 year, or in some provinces for double the amount. For example, in Alicante province, they ask you for double the amount. They will ask you for 70,000 euros in Alicante province, okay? But we hear that in Valencia, for example, Madrid, La Coruña, Almería, Murcia, they ask for only 1 year, right? So if you have, imagine that you are, worst case scenario, you are in Alicante, they ask for 70,000 euros in 2 years. If you're showing only savings, you need to have those 70,000 euros for Alicante, right? But if you're recurrent income and you make 36,000 euros pension, for example, annually, well, you're approving 72,000 euros in 2 years, okay? Anyways, this is very nuanced. I have here a few screenshots of people who report on Spainguru's non-lucrative visa group that, for example, this is a lawyer who said Valencia only needs 1 year of funds for the renewal. In Alicante is 2 years, double. Also, credit card are accepted. Someone says in Almeria you only need to show 1 year. And then some people talking about getting loans, etc., as a way to prove funding. We mentioned the IPREM index. Yes, so these financial thresholds are based on an index. Okay, that index may be updated every year, but may not. As you can see there, from 2004, for example, from 2010 until 2016, it stayed the same, and since 2023, it hasn't changed. This is 7,200 euros for 1 year. That's 100% of the IPREM, representing what a dependent needs. Yes. Now, when does the IPREM gets updated? When there is a new national budget. But in order to get a national budget, a new one, there needs to be political agreement. And it's been several years that the political parties, the government, and other political parties haven't reached an agreement to update the national budget. Therefore, there was no chance to update the IPREM. But this can happen at the beginning of any given year. Yes. Everything points out that next year there won't be any agreement. So we're going to stay at 600 euros IPREM on a monthly basis, 7,200 per year. But it could go up. And imagine a scenario, very probable scenario for 2027, for example, that the IPREM goes to 650 euros per month. That will make it 7,800 euros for the dependent and 31,200 euros for the main applicant. Now, if you need to apply after the IPREM went up, those will be the thresholds. If you need to renew your residency, they will apply the new IPREM. So you need to budget accordingly. Okay. We mentioned also that not only you need to prove that you have this funding, but also to supply certain certificates, especially after May 20th, 2025. There's been certain agreements among certain consulates. Some consulates are not asking about this. Recently, there was a first-hand experience at Mexico DF, which they didn't ask any of these certificates, but it seems that UK and USA are asking for this. This is, they want to understand that you are the real owner of the bank account that you're providing statements from, showing full name and address, full account identification. Many people just cross the number of the bank account for privacy reasons. They don't want to see this. Some people got denied. They don't know exactly why, but they said that they crossed the bank number for the privacy, and they got denied because of this. It seems, I cannot prove it, okay, because this information from social media is not very clear. But be careful with that. They want to see that your name is linked to the bank account. They want to see the account opening date or closing date if applicable, and very important, balance as of December 31st of the previous year, and then average balance for the previous year. Yes, they want to see that you had money the previous year, okay? And all this showing certificates from the bank. And many people say that they also want to see wet signatures and wet stamps with signatures with a blue ink pen, which many banks cannot issue, okay? But a lot of people are actually providing these certificates without wet stamps, and they're not having problems, okay? And many people, the problem that they face is that the banks that they have in the US, UK, etc., they don't have these certificates with the average balances and balances, okay? So what many people do is they calculate this by themselves with an Excel, they print it out, they notarize it, they apostille the notarization signature, and this is what they provide, and they make it look as official as possible, and explain in a letter of intent that they did the impossible to show it, but they couldn't do it because their bank wasn't supplying these certificates. And why the authorities are asking for this? This is a screenshot of my bank account. You can see that I asked for this certificate from BBVA in Spain from my mobile phone, and I got a screenshot like this with a JPEG image showing a wet stamp from BBVA. This is what they are used to see, the authorities. But of course, this only happens in Spain and maybe other countries. It's not common elsewhere. So if you can't provide it, you shouldn't be too worried about it, because you are not the only one, okay, who is facing these situations. I have a video where I ask Ainhoa Manero about these new financial requirements, where she explained what she does with her customers. But basically, long story short, if you prove and make it look official that you're doing what's in your possibilities to show the information that they want, and you give them the information, let's say that the format of the information should be on a second place, and they could not or should not deny you because of this. Watch the video because it's really interesting. I hope to also interview her soon with more updates about this. Another question: can I work remotely for non-Spanish companies? Right, and this is a very divided question, very controversial, because many people are very strict about what they interpret about the non-lucrative visa. But the non-lucrative visa is an old type of visa that was created when there was no remote work. And what the law and the regulation says is that you shouldn't work in Spain. This is what it says. Someone was working remotely and went to court, and the Supreme Court of Spain said that this person was okay. It wasn't going against the non-lucrative residency by working remotely because the work was outside of Spain. The Supreme Court of Spain. So really, if you work from Spain under non-lucrative residency, the Supreme Court actually vouches for this, and they should not. It is a gray area, okay? If you're in this situation, I'm not telling you that you have to do it, okay, or suggesting that you should do it. But know that it is a gray area. I have a great video where I ask this Ainhoa Manero, and she explains it much better than me. But many people under non-lucrative residency are working remotely, okay? And nothing happens. They renew their residencies, showing passive income, showing savings. They don't show their work active income. And tax authority, they pay their taxes on their global income, and nothing happens. They renew happily, okay? And you can see YouTubers out there under non-lucrative residencies who were or are working remotely, yes, on YouTube, getting commissions from partners, right? So nothing happens. Now, very important distinction is that when you apply from consulates and there is the smallest doubt that you are working or have the potential to work under a non-lucrative visa, they will deny you immediately, okay? In fact, they are getting very strict, okay? Now, once you get the non-lucrative residency and you decide to work remotely, yes, this is where you enter the gray area, right? So if you're working remotely, of course, now, since 2023, there is a visa called the Digital Nomad Visa or the Workers Visa that may be more suitable for your situation, okay? But since this is an non-lucrative visa webinar where I try to bring you all the information that exists, I'm bringing to your attention that not everything is black or white. Sometimes it's gray, and this is the situation about remote work for non-Spanish companies under the non-lucrative residency. Please remember, I'm not a lawyer, immigration lawyer, and this is not legal advice. Now, in order to dig more about this situation and also to underline the differences between the different consulates, Edinburgh actually officially states that you could potentially work in the UK and still get your non-lucrative residency, depending on the nature of your work. And there was this family who actually wrote their first-hand experience on Spainguru's group, said that the husband was working at the oil platform in the Northern Sea. They all got the non-lucrative residency. The husband flies every 15 days to work to the UK, to Scotland, and nothing happens. Okay, and this is officially recognized by Edinburgh. Also speaking to lawyers, they have cases of pilots who are under non-lucrative residency, and they fly to the US or to the UK, they work for a week doing long-haul flights, and still they're holders of non-lucrative residency. Of course, if you're in this situation, go with legal help, okay, to make sure that you have a successful application. Now, let's talk about private health insurance requirements. As we said, if you're a UK retiree, you have the option to go with the S1 form. Okay, today there was someone posting in the group that this is no longer valid. I never heard this, okay, but I will be following this this post. Many people sometimes post about this and they're wrong, okay? 99% of cases. I have to say that someone told me this, so be careful when you read that on social media, okay? Because I haven't heard about this, and it is very unlikely. But yeah, UK retirees can use the S1 form instead of a private health insurance. Otherwise, you have to get a private health insurance that needs to mimic the full coverage of Spain's public healthcare for the time that you're going to be living in Spain. That is 1 year in the initial application. In order to be a compliant private health insurance, it needs to have certain conditions. First, no co-payments, no reimbursements. This is a little bit, depending on the consulate, they don't like reimbursements either. Houston, for example. No waiting periods, okay? You need to be covered from the day you enter Spain. Full coverage with certain nuances. We're going to talk about that. And in 99% of cases, you will need to pay the full year in advance. That's what the company needs to issue the certificate of coverage with the right wording in Spanish. That is a requirement for your non-lucrative visa application. Let's answer a few questions. Are my medicine costs covered? With private health insurance in Spain, you will have to pay full retail price of medicines, okay? This is not, in the US, it's more common that your health insurance pays for the medicines or co-pays, but here, no. The good news are that the cost of medicines is much lower than in the US. What should the health insurance start date be? No clear answer to this question. Always go with experienced brokers or exclusive agents, like the one I recommend on Spainguru.es, who can tell you the right starting date, so you don't start your health insurance before you really use it. But if I had to tell you, the most common answer is that you will have to guesstimate your visa start date and ask for the company to start the coverage the first day of the month in which you intend to enter Spain. Okay. Are there health insurance for older than 75 years of age? There's not many companies with compliant non-lucrative visa private health insurance policies that give for older than 75 years of age. But if I had to mention two companies, we have DKV until 99 and Adeslas until 84. Okay. My exclusive agent works with Adeslas. You can contact him on spainguru.es. What if I have pre-existing conditions? Now, circling back to the condition of full coverage. This is where the nuances happen. Depending on the severity of the pre-existing condition, you will get coverage or not, or you get exclusions or not. Now, if you have had cancer diagnosis within the last 5 years, chances are that you won't be able to get private health insurance coverage. You will have to wait. To give you an example of a severe pre-existing condition. Now, if you have a less severe pre-existing condition like high blood pressure, for example, what can happen is that the company will give you a policy that is compliant for the non-lucrative visa application, but they will exclude that pre-existing conditions from the coverage. Therefore, once you move to Spain, you will be able to apply for the NLV, get approved, move to Spain, but if any problem arises linked to those pre-existing conditions, you will have to pay your treatment out of pocket. Okay? Now, solution for this is that after 1 year of legal residence in Spain, you can apply for the Convenio Especial, which is a social security scheme that can grant you access to the Spanish public system, paying 60 euros if you're younger than 65, or 150 euros if you're older than 65 per month. And once you have access to public system, your treatments for any pre-existing conditions are covered. Under the Convenio Especial, you still need to pay retail price for your medicines, but the treatment are covered. Okay. Another thing to point out is that nearly never people who need to renew their non-lucrative residency after 1 year, they can do it using the Convenio Especial, because usually the time frame in order to renew ends earlier than when you get effective access to the public healthcare system. Therefore, you will need to renew using private health insurance, and then for renewal year 4 and 5, potentially you will have had time to get your true access to the Convenio Especial, and therefore you could just stop paying your private health insurance, which I don't recommend you do. I personally use private and public. Okay, if you have the money, I highly recommend you having those two systems, because you will get both, the best of both worlds. Can I use my current health insurance from the UK and the USA? Short answer is, if it's compliant, yes, you can. The long answer is, I highly don't recommend it. Why? Because you can have certain problems along the way. First, many of those policies have co-payments, and if the officer reviewing your policy sees the word co-payment, you can get denied, or reimbursement clauses. Sometimes it could be considered to be a travel health policy, okay? And it cannot be a travel health policy. Sometimes the certificate of coverage that these companies will issue will not be in Spanish. You will have to sworn translate it. That costs a lot of money, and potentially won't have the right wording that the officer needs to approve you. Okay, these are a few things that could happen. And the Spanish companies are quite affordable. We're sure that it works. Okay, and if you work with brokers, experienced brokers that know about this visa, or exclusive agents, in my case on spainguru.es, my exclusive agent does dozens of these policies, and all of them are approved. Okay, so, and they're much more affordable usually than the policies from the USA. Therefore, that would be my recommendation. Do I need a Spanish bank account to hire these policies? No, you don't. Okay, and if someone asks you for a Spanish bank account, it's because you are not talking to the right person. Okay, it wouldn't make any sense that someone applying for a Spanish visa would be required to have a Spanish bank account to hire this product. Can I pay on a monthly basis? Now, if you happen that you, for example, you lived in Spain before and you have a Spanish bank account, potentially you could be paying on a monthly basis, okay? But still many companies will need you to pay yearly in order to get you the certificate of coverage. Okay, you need to talk to your broker. You need to talk to the person that you are using to hire this policy. Can there be reimbursements? This is a gray area. Depending on the consulate, it could be a problem or not. Okay, in my opinion, if I had to apply for this visa, I will try to reduce the amount of headaches. Therefore, if you have a policy that has reimbursements, I wouldn't choose it unless it would be the best policy or the one you really want, and take the risk. Will I get a refund if I'm denied? Many people ask this on social media, and I'm always scared that they do so, because it means that they're not reading the contract that they will be signing. This is decided by the health insurance policy contract, and specifically decided in the cancellation clause. Depending what you're signing a certain cancellation clause that could be that you don't get any refund in any case, or you get a partial refund, like you will get charged for the taxes or whatever. Some refund clauses or cancellation clauses will say you will get a refund only if the denial is because of the health insurance policy, right? So always read what you're signing, including and especially the cancellation clause, okay? Your broker, your exclusive agent should be able to answer you this question. Make sure that you don't sign anything that you're not sure. If you work with my exclusive agent, it's full refund if you get denied for any reason. What are the top companies? Biggest one is Adeslas. Then you have also big ones: Asisa, DKV, ASA, Salus, Caser, Sanitas, AXA, Mafre. Many companies, okay? By far, Adeslas is the biggest with 30% of the market, okay? And I think 24% of Spaniards have also private health insurance. Among them, I'm one of them. So definitely, Adeslas is the most chosen one, probably the best value for money, okay? But Sanitas, for example, and DKV, they are more expensive, but maybe they have more services or more coverage, okay? Definitely, you need to compare, and the level of coverage will depend on the area where you're moving to. Also, something important that you must know is that these are private companies that are constantly renegotiating with hospitals, with doctors. So maybe you do a huge investigation, you move next year, you have the coverage that you investigated, but after 1 year, you will see that, for example, this hospital stopped working with your health insurance, and now it's working with another health insurance, okay? That can also happen. In the end, it's a, let's say, dynamic sector. So it's not that once you do the investigation that stays set on stone forever, right? Another thing that is important to point out is that people reported some misleading stuff happening on BLS websites. This is for Washington, D.C. and also for Manila. And I don't know if other websites, different BLS websites, that they're trying to sell you a travel health insurance, which is absolutely misleading because you will be denied. Sorry for the noisy slide here, but on the bottom left, you can see a screenshot of the very same BLS website and the consulate saying that no travel health insurance will be accepted. Therefore, if you buy this travel health insurance that BLS is trying to push you, you will get denied. Okay, so very careful with that. This Indian company is trying to get more money by selling you something that will not be accepted later on. So be careful with that. Only work with the right people. If you want to know more, you're in very good hands on Spainguru. I personally vet my partners. I have been recommending Carlos Blanco for 3 years. Stellar reviews. He's also an expert immigration lawyer. He can give you 3 months start date extensions to start. And then once you move to Spain, he can also extend the start date, or just before or after the appointment, he can move the extension date more in case you need. Okay, so you need to discuss about the possibilities. But 3 months extension to start the visa, to start the health insurance coverage is unheard of, okay, in the sector. Most will only give you 1 month, okay? And definitely he has incredible reviews, and he knows the non-lucrative visa procedure, the ins and outs, because he also does those as an expert immigration lawyer. You can see here some first-hand experiences with him. So yes, definitely it is a true honor to recommend him, because I think you're in very good hands. But of course, I recommend you to shop around, compare the offers, and see what is best for you. Then there is the medical certificate. This is different and separate from the health insurance. It is healthcare too, health related, but has nothing to do. And there are differences depending on who signs this and where you're applying from. Now, this certificate proves that you are not holder of an infectious disease within the list of a certain protocol in 2005, like yellow fever, this kind of stuff, okay? Actually, you can go to Spain as a tourist and have Ebola. Nobody will tell you anything. But if you want to get the non-lucrative visa, you need to prove that you are not having this infectious disease. So it is a bit absurd, but you have to provide it. Very important, the certificate has a 3-month validity, right? And when you submit your papers, it needs to be valid. Now, in the USA, Canada, Australia, you will get a template from the consulate that I highly recommend you to have it not only in English, but also in Spanish, because if the doctor signs it also in Spanish, you will save having to sworn translate it into Spanish, saving some euros or dollars. Every consulate usually can provide you a template, a PDF that you print. In these countries, it is enough if you print it with the doctor's letterhead. It comes with a wet stamp from the doctor, registration number, wet signature. That will make it official. And it doesn't need to be apostilled. But if you're providing a certificate from a UK doctor, UK doctors needs to be apostilled. And for this sake, they need to be registered at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the UK. They need to be FCDO registered, right? Now there's a third option, which is a Spanish doctor, right? And linked to the first question, my doctor won't sign the medical certificate template. What can I do? My answer would be change doctor, right? Until you get someone who can sign it. Now, if you are in the UK, yes, if you go on Spainguru.es, I put you in contact with a discount with an online service called ZoomDoc that will do a call with you online. Everything is online, and you will get the certificate. And after, you will need to apostille and sworn translate it. Okay. But there's also another option on Spainguru.es. I put you in contact with a Spanish doctor. Again, he arranges a call with you where he asks you a questionnaire. Okay. And then we'll send you the digital certificate. Now, the advantage of using a Spanish doctor is that it doesn't need to be apostilled and it doesn't need to be sworn translated. But certain consulates require you to be physically in Spain at the time of issuance of the certificate. Okay. In the past, Manchester was one of these consulates, but it's not anymore. So all the 3 UK consulates they don't have this rule, but certain consulates have this rule. So if you're interested in using the Spanish doctor with the advantages that it has, you fill the form on Spainguru.es, you write the consulate where you're applying from, and the doctor will tell you if his certificate is being accepted at that consulate or not. Okay? This is the situation, and this table summarizes what I just said. You can watch it in the recording of the video later on. Okay? Now, if you think that the information that I'm sharing with you today is useful and can help yourself and others, please leave a review on Trustpilot, because it really, really helps me and Spainguru bringing this information to everyone who is moving to Spain using the non-lucrative visa. I really, really appreciate it. Now, let's talk about the clean criminal background check. You will have to show a squeaky clean background check or police check during the past 5 years. Okay, it must be clean, absolutely clean. In the UK, it's called the ACRO, right? In the US, it's the FBI background check. And usually the validity of these certificates is 6 months. This could change anytime. You always will have to apostille those certificates and sworn translate to Spanish. In the case of the FBI background check, it will need a federal apostille, right? Now, am I still eligible with records on my background check? Big question. And again, it depends on the severity or how serious those records are, even if it happened decades ago. If you serve conviction time, blood crimes, violent crimes, repetition of fraud, Stuff like that, you could get denied, even if that happened many years ago. Therefore, if you're in this situation, potentially it is better pathway to expunge or delete those records, if you have the right to do so in your countries, and apply with a clean criminal record. This is important. If you can't do that, you can use a lawyer, like the ones recommended on Spainguru.es, that could prove that your type of record should be deleted as per the Spanish laws. Yes, so all this needs to be structured correctly so that the consulate can say that even if your record exists in Spain, it shouldn't, therefore it shouldn't be considered for your application, right? Now, if you have smaller things like driving under the influence, smoking pot 20 years ago, stuff like that, small things, usually they are overlooked and won't have any issues, okay? But it is up to the officer reviewing your case on a case-by-case. Yes. Am I still eligible with a no live trace in the ACRO? Yes, you could be eligible, but the consulate will ask for an extra report asking what type of record is under that no live trace. They want to see what happened and take a decision as per that report. Can I expedite the background check federal apostille in the US? No, officially. Let's say not without using a private service. Okay, used to be an expedite service, but now it doesn't exist. And normally it takes weeks in the US to get your apostille. Okay, between 3 to 7 weeks. You pay $20, you get your apostille. But you could wait weeks. If you need your apostille in 10 days, you can use my recommended US apostille service on Spainguru.es. Can I notarize the background check and use a state apostille instead in the US? No, don't do it. Straight denial. Where can I have my fingerprints taken in the US? US Post Office or approved FBI channelers. Okay, they have scanning machines. That's the best way to do it. You get your digital FBI background check on your email. You print that out, put it in an envelope, and send it to Washington, D.C. or to my recommended apostille services. What if my fingerprints are eligible in the US? Send me an email to hello@spainguru.es and I can send you certain companies that have better scanners. Now, here's a few first-hand experiences. The ACRO is taking 2 days. With Fast Track, you pay more and you get it in only 2 days. But normally it's taking between 2 to 6 weeks to get the ACRO. In Canada, it's very, very fast to obtain the background check and also the apostille lately. Now let's talk about proof of not working. And this is something that is changing as we speak. They're getting a little bit more strict about this everywhere. This is going to be very, very consulate specific. There is no clear answer to this question. Can I work until my visa is granted? I can tell you, no one can answer you that because it will depend on the consulate. It will depend on the person you're talking to. It will depend on the officer who is reviewing your case. It will depend on your age, how you look. This is truly, I'm just stating what people are saying on the group, people who have applied and got their visas or didn't, right? This is important. Now, typically, this is called a retirement visa. And if you show a receipt of a pension, it's a straightforward case. The officer will say, oh, this person is retired, they don't have any plan to work, everything is fine. You provide the P45. If you're still working, they will, if you quit before applying for the visa, in the UK, you provide the P45. In the US, resignation letter, termination letter from employer, both translated and notarized. If you were a freelancer, a notarized affidavit promising not to work in the US, and in the UK, a letter from HMRC, an accountant stating having ceased trading and registered for self-employment. But should you quit before I get the visa? Many people want to work until the very last moment, and with different outcomes because of everything that I told you before. And we're going to see the situation by showing you a few screenshots that explain the situation. Another frequently asked question, is renting out a property considered a job? Size matters. If you have 1, 2 properties and you rent them long-term, there are no operations involved, then it's considered to be passive income. If you have 30 properties on Airbnb, could be considered to be a job. Okay. Therefore, people that are in that situation or somewhere in the middle, in order to avoid any misunderstandings, they appoint a property manager, and that sends the, let's say, the proceeds of that business or that operation, making it sure to show that you are not part of the management operations of that, right? Is investing in stocks considered active income? No. Can I volunteer while on an NLV? Yes, as long as you don't get paid. As I mentioned before, I wanted to share with you first-hand experiences of people asking in the different consulates. And every week, if not, every month for sure, if not every week, people are asking, like, I don't want to quit my job unless I'm sure I get my visa. What's the situation, right? And I'm telling you, I'm going to show you some screenshots here. For the UK, a P45 is one way, but so is a letter from your employer stating that you have resigned and will leave on a certain date. But then someone else says, looks like it's a bit of a potluck if they accept a letter from HR department in place of a P45 if working up to the last minute. This is the situation. And every week people are asking about this, and I don't see any definite answer. Nor it is stated in the UK consulates in the official information that if you provide clearly this and this and this information, you could just keep on working, right? What I see in the UK is that you provide all the information, you say, you provide the letter from HR, promising that you will stop working, etc., but they will not grant you the visa, and they will give you 10 days to provide the P45 form. So you will have to quit and get the P45. This is the situation in the UK that I've seen. In the US, it's really depending on the consulate or BLS office, right? I've seen people in DC or Los Angeles, BLS, okay, after working with BLS, that they accepted the fact that people were promising to quit their job before their visa were granted, and everything was okay. But then this person in Houston in June could not submit the paperwork, and because the retirement was, even if the retirement date that this person stated was still in the future, even if that resignation date was before the visa start request, okay? And this is Houston, which is probably the craziest consulate out there because of their interpretation of the rules. So the applicant was told that it can only apply after officially retiring with updated documents. And unfortunately, this person didn't update their situation, okay, on social media, so I couldn't really follow up. Another example here is Washington, D.C. These young people, the consulate required resignation proof dated before the visa start and sworn statement of no working in Spain, and that was fine. That was fine. And also they need to provide a rental contract for 3 months with Airbnb, that then they reduced it to 2 months. Side comment about this extra requirement from this consulate. Now, to show you how crazy the consulates can be about the potential of you working or having the plan to work, December 2023, a Venezuelan person applied for the NLV at the Buenos Aires consulate and got denied because this person showed activity in LinkedIn. This person appealed the decision, went to court in Madrid, and Madrid court said that the consulate was right. Imagine this, okay? And many people also ask, do they Google me? Do they search me online? No, they cannot do that. It's not what, they have forbidden to Google you. Well, they definitely went to LinkedIn to see this person activity. Yes, they definitely did. So really the consulate is a big, big door if you're working. If you're working or you show that you potentially have the plan to work. And I also received, a few months ago, somebody asked me like, Bruno, I sent in my letter of intent that I wanted to spend 1 year without working in Spain, but then I wanted to go back to the States and continue with my career, and they denied me. Shouldn't have I said that? And I'm like, of course you shouldn't. Even if it's your right. Nowhere in the law says that you can't spend 1 year without working or 5 without working in Spain and then go back to work later on. But that will be enough for the consulates to deny you. And as you can see, the court in Madrid are supporting this interpretation. So this is the situation about working until the last minute for the non-lucrative residency. And as I said, I'm seeing more and more scrutiny, especially the younger you are. If you're applying, today there was someone applying, younger person, okay? She did anonymously, but I can see that she's a young person, and the Houston consulate was like, are you sure you're applying for the NLV and not for the student visa? Yes. Are you sure you plan to retire, etc.? So they make it, they make it a little bit, younger people, work age people face more scrutiny. Now let's talk about marriage, birth certificates, and non-married couples. Married couples need a valid and updated marriage certificate that usually have a 6-month validity. If you're moving with children, they will also need to provide birth certificates, both apostille and sworn translated, to Spanish if needed. Non-married couples can apply, but they need to prove their relationship. The best is to prove a legal partnership. You make a strong case. But if you don't have that legal partnership, you can prove that you're a stable partner showing a 1-year cohabitation or children together. That would make it a strong case, or anything that you can prove that you are a couple, but this will be a weaker case. Solution, you both apply as main applicants, raising the financial threshold to 28,800 euros as per IPREM 2020-25. The certificates must be apostilled by the country that issued them. So if you married in Cyprus, it needs to get an apostille from Cyprus authorities. If you married in California, by the California state. Yes. And if you married in Colombia, an apostille from Colombia authorities, but it doesn't need to be sworn translated because it's already in Spanish, right? What about adult children and ascendants? Unfortunately, they cannot be dependents any longer and must apply as main applicants as of May 20th, 2025. If you want to apply with adult children and ascendants, potentially other visa pathways are better. And here's the article of the Reglamento de Extranjería, Article 61, underlined in red everything what I just said, if you want to read the law directly. Now, we mentioned sworn translations very much so far, but who are these special official translators? They are accredited only by the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They pass a hard exam to get certified. Each sworn translator has a unique registration number. Their translations are accepted by all Spanish institutions, including consulates and BLS. Translations are done remotely and signed with a legally valid electronic signature. That means that you don't need to send any physical papers overseas. You just scan, you attach to the email, you send an email to the sworn translator, you ask for the price, for the date of delivery. They will send you an email back with a PDF that has the legal electronic signature on it. You can find my recommended sworn translators on spainguru.es. They are so used to all the documentation that usually is submitted for this visa, and they are very, very affordable with great reviews. Can I use any translator from the American Translator Association? No. And why I mention this association? Because LA BLS and Miami BLS mention this association, but it has nothing to do with sworn translators in Spain. It has nothing to do, except that they are translators. But they are not sworn translators appointed by the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Can a sworn translator work with several language pairs? No, they only can do one language pair. That is English-Spanish, Spanish-English, for example. But if you need any language pair out there, like German-Spanish, because you got married in France, did I say French? French, German, any language pair, you can also find it on spainguru.es, okay? I put you in contact with companies that offer you sworn translators from any language pair. How much do sworn translations cost? Usually around 40 euros per page, depending on complexity and how fast you want the translations to be done. And this is a $1 million question. What comes first? Apostille, then sworn translation? Do I have to sworn translate the apostille itself? All right, this is how much risk you want to take. If you want zero risk, sworn translate also the apostille. Okay, so for example, you get your FBI background check. Yes, you sworn translate the certificate and you obtain the apostille, and you also sworn translate the apostille. Zero risk. This is what every lawyer will tell you to do. But also it will cost you more money. Okay, so some people decide not to sworn translate the apostille, saving some money, but there is some risk that the official check in your case had a bad morning and tells you that you need to provide a sworn translation of the apostille itself, giving you only 10 days to do so. which will cost you more money because you will have to do an urgent translation. So yeah, that's the story with an answer, with that question. And another big question is, should I translate my bank statements? And again, there is no clear answer to this. As you can see, I ran a poll there, and 77% of people said that they didn't sworn translate their bank statements in English. Okay. But some decided, 17%, to sworn translate only the summary pages to make it more official. 3% sworn translated everything. And some people had banks that provided sworn bank statements in Spanish, and they did provide them in Spanish. So this is the situation about bank statements. Many people decide not to sworn translate them. Everything is fine. But I did hear people who got problems because they didn't sworn translate anything, right? So probably middle ground, sworn translate only summary pages could be a potential solution to reduce risk drastically. More updates 2025 post May 20th. So very important. The rules didn't change for the non-lucrative visa. Okay. There's no plans to make the non-lucrative visa stricter. It's true that some consulates now have stricter views about certain things that we already mentioned. Okay. But the biggest change was that the consulates now want more certificates for the bank statements and your bank accounts. Okay. To avoid fraudulent transfers, or to avoid that you're showing a bank account that is not yours, stuff like that. Okay. But in general, this is the situation. And remember that every consulate is quite different. Therefore, staying updated about your specific consulate is very important too. Now, if we had to compare US and UK consulates, UK consulates don't ask for tax returns. Okay. They're stricter about showing proof that you are not working. Okay. And people report that bank certificates need to be legalized and apostilled. Okay. But this is depending on who you ask. And the visa fee is more expensive, as you probably know. In the USA, the bank statements need to include the new requirements for the financial requirements, the certificates, the balances, etc. Okay. And in some consulates in the UK, they're also asking for this. So check the official requirements. Okay. And the visa fee is much lower than in the UK. Now, some very specific things, and this I'm quoting a person who is applying in these different consulates in the Los Angeles consulate. If you've seen the requirements, and many people are asking me about this, no loans or mortgages are allowed. This is written in the official requirements. But many people have reported having had mortgages and being approved. So it is a bit, and it's not very clear. Chicago, you must show a 3-month lease, as we said, and it's not only Chicago, but also Washington, D.C., also Houston, okay, also Boston, if I'm not wrong. New York doesn't work with BLS. It is processed by the consulate, and it works quite well, but they have asked in the past for requirements that were not published on the website. And again, reading first-hand experience is important. Miami has 12 months of bank statements, or a lot of statements, and a notarized affidavit not to work. Boston asking a number of IRA, 401k, no IRA and 401ks are accepted to prove funding. 3 years of tax returns, 3 months of statements. DC, 3 months lease, motivation letter, affidavit not to work. San Francisco, proof of not working required. Yes, this is a little bit changing. This can change anytime, but just to show you, take this with a pinch of salt, just to show you how the different consulates have different interpretations and requirements, and why you need to be on top of that. Remember, you can join my YouTube channel, subscribe. It is free. You can opt out anytime. I publish 1 video per day. 500 of them plus are about the Spanish non-lucrative visa. Yes. So if you want to stay in touch, if you want to be on top of it, join the YouTube channel and watch the videos. And if you like them, of course, give it a like and subscribe. Remember, there's a Q&A session at the end. You can write your questions anytime. I see many people connected, only one question. So ask your questions in the chat box in the bottom right corner of your screen right now, and add a question mark at the end, so it's easy for me to see that it is a question, and I can publish it so everyone can read it. And if you think the information is interesting, please leave a review on Trustpilot. There's a button on the top that redirects you to Trustpilot. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps. And comment any question below so I can answer you as soon as I see it. Thank you so much. Now let's continue with doing the application. And I will have a sip of water, if you excuse me. Sorry, there it goes. Now they're giving the visa validity for 1 year, used to be 90 days, okay? And the question that is being asked very often now is, can I enter anytime during this visa validity of 1 year? And it should. The answer be yes. They give you for 1 year, the visa validity is for 1 year, so you can enter Spain anytime during that year, right? But there is certain information, like internal information from the Foreign Office, etc., that states that you still have to enter within the first 90 days. And the reason why the visa validity is for 1 year is to tackle the problem that many people faced, because once you enter Spain, there's no police station appointments for the fingerprints for the residency card, and the visa expired after 90 days. People didn't have a residency card, and they were stuck in Spain without a valid visa and without a residency card. So they decided to extend the visa validity so that you could use the visa to come in and out of Spain without being stuck until you got your residency card. But they didn't seem to clarify whether you can enter initially anytime during that first year or still during the first 90 days. The recommendation, if you can choose, better to enter Spain during the first 90 days of the visa validity until we have more information about this. That unfortunately the Foreign Office has not clarified yet. They need to clarify it 100%, okay? Maybe we are too prudent, okay, by stating that still enter the first 90 days where the visa validity is 1 year and nothing happens, right? It should be, right? But we know Spanish bureaucracy and we try to be prudent. Not enough time has passed so that we see that people entering after the initial 90 days, everything was fine later on. They didn't find or face any issue, okay? So I'm just saying that we didn't see enough time pass and make sure that everything is perfect, okay? So that is the recommendation. Common mistakes to avoid in the application: not checking specific consulate requirements. Check the consulate requirements in English, in Spanish, the BLS requirements, and also internal requirements from first-hand experience from people applying, okay? And check these requirements constantly, every 15 days, every 30 days, if you can. I remember once someone posted, I was checking the requirements every 15 days, and every time I found something new. Maybe because the person wasn't reading well, because the list is very long, or because the consulate or BLS updated the website and you need to stay on top of that. Applying with wrong documents, expired documents, starting with the easy stuff and leaving the hard stuff at the end, wrong chronology, wrong health insurance with co-payments, for example, okay, or with the wrong certificate of coverage. Say that you plan to work or not enough proof, or you don't convince enough that you're not going to be working, what we've been explaining before. Let's talk about the timing. Usually, if you start 6 months before gathering documentation and apostilles and some translations, is enough for the US and Canada. UK should be even faster if you have straightforward documents. If you got married, you know, in Trinidad and Tobago or Cyprus, or you got children in China or Soviet Union or whatever, then it's not a straightforward case, and those documents will take longer, right? So plan accordingly. Most consulates will retain the passports while they are processing the visa. And in the US, it's easier to get a second passport, but in the UK, it's very hard. Now, certain consulates have a form where you can ask to keep your passport while the visa is processed, but people are reporting that they're not being successful at keeping their passports. Some people report that they were successful at convincing BLS to keep their passport because they needed to buy a property in Spain, because they need to attend a marriage or whatever. It is not very clear how easy it is. But in the US, it's clear that obtaining a second passport is easy compared to the UK, which is hard. Now, let's go more granular. Documents preparation, it takes 2 to 3 months. Attending appointment on the 3rd month. Ballpark figures. You wait for the approval, depending on the consulate, depending on the workload, 2 months approximately. Should not be more than 3. But Manchester, for example, now is more than 3. If they want more documentation, they will only give you 10 days to provide it. You can choose visa start date in a 90-day window from application date, but this may be changing as we speak. And officially, once you enter Spain during the visa validity period, you will have to get your residency card within 30 days. But no one does this because there are no appointments once you are in Spain. Therefore, it will take even longer than 30 days and nothing really will happen. Now, there are other things to take into account. This person said you can ask for the visa to be valid for up to 3 months in advance to start the visa in the future. However, the difficulty I found was finding a health insurance company who will work that far out, as most only do 2. And I would say that now most only do 1 month in the future to start the policy. But if you use my exclusive agent, he can extend that in the future to make it smoother for you. Now, let's talk about the timing again. And this is a typical timeline if everything goes fine. You submit your documents on date A. And when you submit your documents, you can say, I want the visa to start in the future. Okay? Supposedly, you have a 90-day window to ask a date within that window to start the visa in the future, allowing time for processing. Imagine that your visa is granted, the time for processing is shorter than the date that you chose, and the officer decided to make you happy and start the visa the date that you chose in the future. That visa validity will start on that date, and then we said validity period will be for 1 year, but right now it's wise to enter within the first 90 days. Okay, I hope that soon I will get more information to say this is not true and that you can enter anytime after 1 year. Okay, but right now I don't have that information. You receive the visa, you have let's say the recommended 90 days to enter, and you enter on letter C. Yes, you entered on that day. Officially, you have 30 days from that entry in Spain within the visa validity period to get your residency card. Several weeks, if not months, pass, you get your residency card. The start date of your residency card should be the day in which you enter Spain, right? That's the start date of your residency. When you're after the start date of your residency is the expiration date. Now, you will have to renew your residency 60 days before the expiration date and up to 90 days after the expiration date. But it is extremely highly recommended to start the renewal as soon as possible. That is 60 days before the expiration date of your TA card. Because if you get any problem, you still have days to apply again for the renewal and potentially fix any issues. Another way to see this process, and again, this is for illustration purposes only, it could be different in every case, but just so that you have a visual way to see it. First, you find out what your consulate is. Second, you check the official requirements. Third, you start with difficult documents, usually police records. You apostille them and so translate them. You obtain the medical certificate with a 3-month validity. You get your health insurance, and while you are doing all this, you start already trying to get an appointment with the BLS office or a consulate. You get that appointment, you attend the appointment, you submit the papers, you wait for the visa processing, you collect the visa, or they send it to you, you travel to Spain within visa validity period. Once you are in Spain, it's recommended that you get the empadronamiento, which is the registration of your rental contract in the city hall of the city where you live, so that you can use it as proof of address for your residency card appointment or TA card at the national police station or foreign office. Another way to see it is a Gantt chart, yes, where you can see in blue the validity dates for the different documents. Police check usually 6 months, marriage certificate, birth certificate 6 months, yes. So this is more or less 12 months from January to November, really, 11 months. So in February, you get these certificates, you sworn translate them and apostille them in March. In April, you get your financial documents, the medical certificate, which is valid for 3 months. In May, you get your health insurance. You have started to try to get the appointments beginning of April. Hopefully, you get your appointment by mid-June. You attend it. Submit everything. The processing period will go until end of August. You get your visa. You move to Spain. You start your health insurance. Now, there is some updates about all these timings, okay? And this is changing as we speak, right? Because the way that authorities do is that they release the new dates, the new timeframes, and then they expect that the authorities, let's say the consulates and everyone working, adapts to the new rules. But that doesn't really happen in practice, and at least not immediately. Application must now be submitted no later than 2 months before your planned arrival in Spain. Unless exceptional reasons justify a short time frame, you can submit your application as early as 6 months and up to 2 months prior to your intended entry date. In summary, decision deadline 1 month from consulate communication, and default rejection if no decision within that month. So supposedly the authorities are telling you, like, if after 1 month of submitting your documentation, you don't get an answer, you can already start a procedure to ask for a decision, okay? But in practice, no one does, because it is very common that the decision takes more than 1 month, depending on the consulate. As we said, Manchester now is taking 12 weeks, easy. But if you want to read this, you can see Article 63 of Reglamento de Extranjería. It is highlighted everything that I just mentioned. Doesn't mean that in practice and in reality they are applying these timeframes. But if you're working with a lawyer, it is important that you have the conversation if you are in any of this situation, and if you want to push your visa decision, that you have the tools to do it. Let's go back to taxes, especially for people who plan to sell their home before moving to Spain. Remember that once you have become a Spanish tax resident in a certain calendar year, if you sell your home during that same year, you will be liable for capital gains tax on the sale of your home. There are ways to mitigate this tax, like if you're selling the primary residence and you invest those proceeds into a primary residence in Spain, for example, or if you're older than 65, several conditions to mitigate it. But the best way to avoid it is to time your move to Spain to avoid being a Spanish tax resident during the same calendar year in which you sell your home. This is the first case scenario here. You sell on December 31st and you move to Spain on January 1st. Those are different tax years. Therefore, you're not going to be liable for CGT. But if you sell your home in January 2026, for example, and you move to Spain before the 2nd of July 2026, and you stay every day until the end of the calendar year, then you become a Spanish tax resident in 2026 from January 1st, retroactively. Therefore, that sale, you will have to pay capital gains tax on the home, on the sale of your home. If you want to read more about this tax and many other taxes, not only you can join my webinar, but also you can read on Spainguru's blog. You search for the category taxes and you read all these articles that are, let's say, tailor-made. If we come from the UK or from the US, tailor-made for that situation. Definitely recommended. And if you want to stay updated about news and everything, join my newsletter. You can join it by pushing the button there on the top. Now, let's go for after arrival in Spain. Remember that Schengen is a 29 European country internally borderless group of countries. So if you arrive to Spain from outside of Schengen, you will get an entry stamp or an entry scan, especially after October 12th, and that will act as proof of entry in Spain, right? Because you need to have a proof of entry, a date of proof of entry for the national police station appointment that will grant you the residency card. They want to know when you enter Spain, not Schengen, Spain. So if you enter Spain from another Schengen country, there will not be a border control and you will not have a proof of entry into Spain. So if you fly from New York to Frankfurt and then you drive a car from Germany to France and then you drive from France to Spain, how do you prove you enter Spain? There is a way to do it, which is the Declaración de Entrada. It's one-page document. You can find Spainguru Declaración de Entrada. You print it out, you fill it up. Once you enter Spain, you go to the nearest police station to the border, or if you enter via airplane, you go in the police station in the airport, and you ask them to stamp it. And now you have a proof of entry in Spain, which is official, and you can prove it when you try to get your residency card. Now, Another recommendation to enter Spain, get a Spanish SIM card and keep the SIM card of your origin country, because you want to make sure that you can control your bank account in the origin country and other services that require to send you 2FA's SMS, okay, push notifications to your phone. And you also want to receive SMS from Spanish authorities for the different procedures. Another recommendation, open a non-resident bank account once you are in Spain. You go to a brick and mortar bank, you open a non-resident bank account in euros, and you use it to pay your rent, your bills, your utilities, gym, etc., until you get your residency card. That can take months. Obtain the empadronamiento, that usually has a 3-month validity. We said, I recently released an article. Not every rental contract works for this, and it is nuanced. Depending on which ayuntamiento, they have different rules. But basically, long story short, at least 6-month rental will be valid for empadronamiento. Make sure when you rent a property that the landlord will let you get that empadronamiento, okay? And remember that there is an official 30-day limit to get your TA card or residency card, but in practice, no one does because there are no appointments. Frequently asked question, is the padrón strictly necessary for the residency card? And second question is, there are no appointments to obtain the TA. What should I do? Okay. And here are a few screenshots. People waiting for 4 months to get their appointment in Valencia. This other one, 5 months in Alicante. They have no luck. They're getting a bit stressed because they want their residency cards. But this is a fact that this is happening. Now, answering the questions. In practice, no one gets the appointment in just 1 month. So don't worry. And is the empadronamiento officially required? Actually not, okay? But 95% of police stations will ask you for an empadronamiento, okay? But many police stations, especially the big ones, are okay if you show a rental contract. They're okay if you show a Airbnb receipt. If you have the possibility to get an empadronamiento, try to get it, but it's not the only way to do it, okay? This is a lawyer who wrote this, but yeah, try to get an empadronamiento. Renewal process, as we said, 60 days before the expiration date, you can start the renewal process. It's recommended to do it as soon as possible. It will grant your renewal for 2 more years, and then after those 2 more years, you need to renew for year 4 and 5, total 5 years. Potentially after that period, you could potentially get the long-term residency. We talked about the financial thresholds. Depending on the province, they will ask you 1 year or 2 years, okay? And after 5 years, you could go for the long-term residency, which is much better than the non-lucrative residency. It is much easier. You have more flexibility. You don't need to have proof of health insurance. It is much better. So if you can, and your objective is to stay in Spain long-term, definitely try to go for that one, but you have to comply with its own requirements. Now, big controversial one. After May 20th, 2025, there is a minimum stay requirement for the renewal of any temporary visa, among them the non-lucrative residency, of 183 days in a natural year, right? So natural year, the immigration year is different than the tax year. Immigration year starts the day you enter Spain until 365 days after it. You enter on July 2nd, 2026. Your immigration year goes July 2nd, 2027. But the tax year starts on January 1st till December 31st. So they may or not overlap, right? Now, the new Reglamento de Extranjería added a minimum stay of 183 days in a natural year, not tax year. And many people think that you need to become a tax resident. Now, the Supreme Court said that in order to establish a minimum stay requirement for the renewal of temporary visas, that needs not to be included in the Reglamento de Extranjería, but in the main organic law. Remember the first slide? Therefore, the Supreme Court said that this requirement cannot be enforced. Therefore, you don't need to become a Spanish tax resident in order to renew your non-lucrative residency, or you don't need to stay 183 days because the Supreme Court says that you don't have to. If they deny you because of this reason, you have an extremely strong case backed by the Supreme Court of Spain, and you will win it 100%. Of course, I'm not a legal expert, okay? I'm just repeating what I know Manero from Stern Abogado is saying, who knows the law very, very well, okay? And protects her customers to the fullest, right? So this is very important. Now, I'm talking only about the renewal of the visa. Now, if you plan to obtain the long-term residency or apply for Spanish citizenship, There are other requirements that you need to comply with. If that is your plan, forget what I said, because there are other minimum stay requirements that are stricter than this for these two other objectives that you need to comply with. Okay, this is why it's always good to go with an immigration expert, because they can help you lay down a long-term strategy for your objectives in Spain that have everything into account, so that everything is done smoothly without making costly mistakes. We're talking about renewal process. Imagine that you are in a province that require you 2 years of funds to get you the renewal. Couple 36,000 times 2 in 2025, 72,000 euros. Imagine the main applicant is getting a 30,000 euros pension on an annual basis. It means that this pension proves 60,000 euros in 2 years. This person will get that amount of money in 2 years. Therefore, they only need to show 12,000 euros more to get to 72,000 euros. Show savings, 12,000 euros, and you're fine. Okay. Or dividends. Okay. Imagine that you need to show 12,000 euros. If you get 6,000 euros in dividends per year, times 2, it will be 12,000 euros. That's how you calculate it. And only for the province that requires you double the amount, because there are several provinces that I just mentioned that require only one. And that can change anytime. The law actually says that you need to prove full funds for the full period. Okay. But some provinces are not applying this, and this could change anytime. What about rental income? Be careful. As I said, it's not safe income. Some provinces are not accepting it. Okay. Or you can only use it to, to support your case, but not use it as the main type of income. Documentation requirements: ongoing private medical insurance coverage or public healthcare system coverage, no coverage gaps, updated passport copies for both individuals, and no police records. This is also something that happens. And now, yes, for the renewal, in most cases, they will require you to have an empadronamiento. Time you need to spend in Spain to maintain your residency, obtain a long-term residency, or citizenship. As I said, these three things overlap. So if you want to imagine, you are a dual passport holder of a Latin American country, Philippines, etc., you can apply for the Spanish citizenship after only 2 years of legal residency in Spain. The maximum time you can be outside of Spain before applying for the passport is 90 days per each of those 2 years. Yes. If you want to renew your residency, we said that it is an ambiguous situation because Supreme Court said minimum stay requirements should not be enforced. But if you want to go for the long-term residency after 5 years of uninterrupted residency and no health coverage gaps, the maximum time you can be in Spain, outside of Spain, is 10 months in the previous 5 years. Those 10 months don't have to be consecutive, but they cannot be in blocks of more than 6 months. And if you're applying for the Spanish citizenship holding a long-term residency, then you cannot be outside of the EU more than 1 year consecutively, or no more than 30 months in 5 years. So all these minimum stay requirements overlap. So be careful with that. Now, some people can renew their non-lucrative residency for not only the first renewal of 2 years, years 2 and 3, second renewal for years 4 and 5. There's an extraordinary renewal that in some provinces accept, but not all of them accept, for years 6 and 7. Okay, for example, Galicia is not allowed, apparently, but there is this possibility. And if you're in this situation that you need to renew for a third time, potentially study it if you need to comply, for example, with the minimum stay requirements of the long-term residency. Now, common pathways to go for work permits, not the only ones, but common pathways. And this is recommended because you can apply for these work permits from abroad in Spain, from outside of Spain, but it is much harder for several reasons than if you move to Spain with a residency. After 1 year, it is much easier to apply for a cuenta propia work permit, which is starting a business, or cuenta ajena, which is when you receive a job offer of a company who wants to sponsor you. Okay. Now, many people has criticized me because they said, this is very difficult. It's impossible, almost. I'm not saying that it is automatic. It's not like after 1 year of residency, boom, you get a work permit. No, you need to comply with the requirements. These requirements may be easy or difficult depending on you, really, and the offer that you got or your business. My wife has done it, and I know many people who got their work permit after a certain residency permit, okay? But you need to comply with the requirements, yes? And there is a third possibility that is controversial, which is moving from non-lucrative residence to digital nomad visa. Why is it controversial? Because you need to prove at least 3 months of prior remote work in order to comply with certain requirements of the digital nomad visa. And of course, you shouldn't have been working, supposedly, but authorities are granting this transition, right? So yes, another recommendation in order to do this modification or transition to work permit is that you first renew your non-lucrative residence, and once you have the renewal for 2 more years, apply for the work permits. Why is this? Because if you get denied for any reason, you still have your residency for the next 2 years, and potentially you can reapply for that work permit until you get accepted. I mentioned you that certain citizenships, if you're a dual passport holder of, for example, Mexico, even Puerto Rico, if you prove that you are from there, etc., Philippines, etc., only after 2 years of your residence can apply for the Spanish citizenship. But remember, you have to be a citizen of these countries by origin, because the Article 22nd of the Civil Code in Spain says that you have to be by origin. It doesn't count to be by naturalization, for example, by residence. Yes. And Spain, let's say, honors the local laws of that specific country in what they consider to be by origin. For example, in Mexico, Article 30 of the Mexican Constitution, if any of your parents is Mexican, even if you were born in the States, you get the citizenship from Mexico by origin because of blood. Yes, but this can change from any of those countries. But you have to be by origin. I have a recent ruling that I published on Spainguru talking about this if you're interested. Now, remember, you can always send me an email to hello@spainguru.es if you have any questions or you want more information. I always answer my emails. And you can use spainguru.es for free. You can join the newsletter that I send every Monday. Yes, where you join. Weekly newsletter here. You can watch any of my webinars here. As you can see, I have added a new webinar where you can ask me anything. November 10th, 6 p.m. Ainhoa Manero will join at 6:30 p.m. from Stern Abogados. I also added this for UK nationals who are moving to Spain about their financial planning from SJB Global, happening on November 27. And then all these webinars every 15 days. They're all for free. Everything is free here. You can also use my Move to Spain checklist. You can see my destinations section, okay? You can use my vetted partners, okay? Read my visa guides for non-lucrative visa, my non-lucrative visa consulates, with dedicated pages for each of these consulates with the official links and first-hand experiences. So all this for absolutely free. You will only pay if you engage with, if you consult with my recommended partners or services. These are, of course, professional services. I do get a commission if I get a conversion here, but definitely this is for free for you to check or, ask them anything. Send them a message or fill a form, whatever. You're not going to get charged, only if you use their services, obviously. But yeah, definitely all the services are listed here in my service page. If you push here, all the services are right here. Not only those professionals, but also logistics like pet transportation, parcel shipping, international moving, learning English, renting, in Spain, so many things. Took me years to get all these recommendations that I have personally vetted. So definitely worth taking some time. And of course, if you haven't joined yet, join my Spanish Non-Lucrative Visa Facebook group with nearly 25,000 members. It is very, very active. It is crazy how active it is. And you get information like super updated from people who are in your same situation. So yes, definitely check spainguru.es for your moving to Spain stress-free and no sugar coatings. No sugar coatings. This is a bonus slide. I asked people, did you use professional for your non-lucrative visa application versus did it yourself? 50% did it themselves. And I asked people if they think that using professional services was worth the cost. And about 8% said yes, 20% said no. This is not specifically Spainguru's partners, but in general, some people say that using, like 80% of people said that using professional help for this visa application is money well spent. For digital nomad visa, for example, it's a minefield. Definitely 95% of people use legal help to apply. For this visa, it's more of a do-it-yourself application. So definitely you can do it yourself if you're organized, if you're meticulous. But if you don't want to have headaches, definitely using professional help can be a good decision. Send me an email to hello@spainguru.es, join the Facebook group, watch the YouTube and newsletter. And remember that this webinar is not legal advice. Please check the official requirements. Now let's go to the Q&A session. And let's see the questions that we have. And of course, thank you so much for joining today. It's almost 2 p.m. here in Malaga. Let's go for the first question. Does the 90-day requirement apply for Puerto Rican citizens? For what? For applying for the citizenship, I guess. 90-day requirement apply. You're talking about Schengen rules? All right, let's go for the long answer. You get your Puerto Rican citizenship certificate by origin. You move to Spain with a residency, with a legal residency. After 2 years, you will be eligible for applying for Spanish citizenship. The minimum, let's say you can maximum be outside of Spain 90 days per each of those 2 years before applying for the citizenship. Now, if you're talking about the 90 days Schengen rule, if you get a residency in Spain, the 90 days and 180 days rule still applies for other members, okay? But it is hard to enforce because it is internally borderless. So authorities will not see that you are, for example, imagine you get your non-lucrative residency in Spain and you go to France for 180 days. Potentially, authorities will not see that you are in France unless they investigate you because you didn't get a stamp on your passport or anything because you crossed a border. There's no border control. Okay, hope that answers the question. Try to be specific when you ask the question because you can see that there's many interpretations. What if you're applying as a Puerto Rican citizen? Again, this is very general. I don't know if I answer you, but important here, screen sharing. I have a lot of answers and stuff for Puerto Ricans, okay? Probably Spainguru.es is the website most consulted by Puerto Ricans. If you go to immigration here, you get Spanish citizenship as a Puerto Rican. I put you with a Puerto Rican lawyer, and you get a service with a discount to get expedite citizenship certificate needed for the application of the Spanish citizenship after 2 years of legal residency, and this certificate doesn't expire. Okay, so very interesting. You get this $25 off of $125, so very affordable, and you don't have to go through the paperwork that takes many weeks with the Puerto Rican authorities. Now, let's go with the next question. Ahmed, I am an Egyptian international graduate student in the UK for 1 year. I'm 50 years old. I lived the past 3 years in Egypt and the last 1 year in UK. Can you apply for the Spain LV through BLS UK London? This is not a clear answer I have for this. Like, people are asking this, for example, I've been living in, I'm a legal resident in Turkey. I have been there only 8 months. Can I apply from Istanbul? So I've seen answers from people saying like, no, you need to be at least 2 years, etc., etc. So I'm not very clear about it. The best is that you consult and you ask, and hopefully you'll be lucky to get an answer. That the consulate in your area and ask for this. Tell them your situation and see if they will take your application. That will be my answer. More questions. Let me see. Ahmed. Funding proof. I have no passive income with the salary savings from my previous Egyptian job. Saving account in UK, 22,000 pounds. 20 plus 20. So you have 100K pounds. Yeah, that's enough. That's, I don't know, 120,000 euros. You only need 30,000 euros. Needs translation, legalization, apostille. Yes, you will need apostille for official documents or legalizations, because apostille is only for the Hague Convention. Not every country is part of the Hague Convention. For example, United Arab Emirates is not part of the Hague Convention, so they don't have apostille, but you still have to legalize those documents with their authorities to be official at the Spanish consulate. So depending where the documents are issued, for example, UK, US, Canada now, Australia, are part of the Hague Convention, so they use the apostille. But many other countries don't have apostille. They will need translation if they're not in Spanish. So sworn translation for official documents, definitely. You can find all these services on spainguru.es. Salary proof needs an Egyptian HR experience letter showing salary in English. Needs translation. You need to show bank statements with the income or with the savings. That's what you need for non-lucrative visa. If I'm not wrong about what you're asking. Let's see, more questions. Let me see something here. All right. We're a married couple in our 60s. The husband is retired. The wife is not yet. Can the retired husband apply for an LV without the wife? Yes. Can the wife apply for the LV after a couple of years when she has retired? Yes. I think so. I think you can. But I still have to, like, whether you can add, like, what you will do is to get, you will piggyback your husband from the residency permit that he has. Yes, and you can do that, definitely, in my opinion. Remember, I'm not an immigration lawyer, but yes, definitely, I think you can. But I will urge you and highly recommend you to consult with an immigration lawyer, 40 minutes consultation, explain this, and have a clear pathway and timing to do this. Okay, it will be money well spent. Okay, don't stay with my answer here. Definitely, I think you can do it, but make sure to get legal advice on this and also stay updated because rules change. Yes, what it is true today, next year could stop being true. Criminal record. Will the Egyptian consulate take 2 to 3 months? I don't know. Could be. And I don't know, like, criminal record. Will the Egyptian consulate? So the criminal record, you need to obtain it from the authorities in the country or countries where you have lived in the past 5 years. Is it 5 years? Not 100% sure, but yes, if you live in Egypt, but you said you live in the UK, you need to get the police checks of those two countries, and they need to be legalized and sworn translated. Legalized by apostille or by that country legalization. Salary proof needs an Egyptian bank statement showing salary. Well, you said that you didn't have salary, you have savings, right? And a salary is active income. You can't show active income for the non-lucrative residency. It needs to be passive income or savings. Needs translation, legalization, apostille. Well, bank statements is a nuanced question. It's not very, very clear. I showed a slide talking about that. So yeah, I think I went through the questions. Definitely, I think, Ahmed, the best is to consult with an immigration expert. They can prepare your file. You don't have to go all the way with a lawyer, but maybe you can put all the documentation in one place and consult with a lawyer that is expert in these submissions and check with the lawyer that all the documentation is fine so that you have higher chances to apply. Okay. So we made it till the end. I really appreciate that you joined today. I will send you a recording of these webinars, 2 hours already. And again, stay in touch. My email is hello@spainguru.es. Thank you. If you think you want to stay in touch and updated, subscribe to the newsletter there on the top. And if you want to leave a review because you think the information that I share with you today, which is absolutely free, but if you think that I deserve a good review, please leave it on Trustpilot. There's a button there on the top. Thank you so much again, and I wish you a wonderful week. Stay in touch, and I see you around or in the next webinars. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Oh, and one more thing. Apparently YouTube says you're gonna love watching this video right here. I think you should watch it.